Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Game Plan. This episode is all about Thursday Night Football, the Oakland Raiders versus the LA Chargers. Very interesting matchup once I dug into the numbers. If you're new to the program, I'll give you the quick rundown here. I run through the injuries. I run through the key statistics in terms of yardage gains. I run through the key, what I call gambler statistics. I'll explain that when I get there. And of course, I run through my game plans, the paths to victory for both the Raiders and the Chargers. And then I am also going to run through my fantasy football projections for each player in this game, each primary player offensively in this game. As I always say, please, before we get rolling here, 2 seconds of your time for 2 clicks, a like and a subscribe. I put a lot of work into these videos, believe it or not. Some features from YouTube are still locked for us. We would like to make these videos more interactive and make them cooler. We could use your support in doing that. And we do a lot of games a week too. So if you're here just looking for betting or fantasy football advice, we get you covered on a bunch more games this week. Again, now another note before I dig in. I had some comments last week. They wanted, a lot of people wanted the graphics to be up longer. So I'm doing a split screen this week, starting this week. Let me know how you like it. If it's better, if it's worse, I'm happy to adapt. Believe me, I try to make this as interactive a channel as possible, as an interactive an experience as possible. But now let's dig into the good stuff, or not the not so good stuff, as it were. The injury report. For both the Raiders and the Chargers. I started pulling these from ESPN. I thought the ESPN injury reports are just a little bit more usable in terms of depth chart and everything. So I'm cutting down the number of injuries I show, but these are the key ones, I think. Rodney Hudson, as I said last week, Raiders fans, I'm worried about the offensive line here. You got Hudson and Trent Brown. They've both been on the injury list for the last couple of weeks, but for a team that just wants to slam Josh Jacobs into the line of scrimmage and see how many yards he can get, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, it seems like, those are big guys to have on your team. Both questionable this week. So that's good. Hudson was doubtful, when I did this video last week. So I think you're okay there. Dwayne Harris, wide receiver. I don't think he's that critical. You need to see a couple defensive linemen. I hate when the depth and defensive line go out, especially when the defensive backfield for Oakland has been kind of exploited in recent weeks. And you see the Chargers have a really nice passing game, which we'll get to in a bit. Now for the Chargers, they're banged up as well. So you have Jeremy Davis, the third receiver, but it seems like Austin Ekeler these days is the third receiver for the Chargers anyway. The right tackle, defensive tackle Justin Jones, that's a big one. Denzel Perryman. So the middle of the defense for the Chargers is banged up. Again, for the Raiders, you would hope Hudson's there so they can exploit the middle of that defense in the running game. And then strong safety is also out of the game at this point. Okay, so let's look into the key rankings, okay? And these are a yard accumulation for the year, right? So, I know, Tyrell Williams being out, it can, change some of the numbers for Oakland and Melvin Gordon being out, that can change some of the numbers for the Chargers and so on. But just bear with me here because they actually do line up, and statistically over time, even if, there have been injuries that cause these things, they actually have some good mathematical precedents to make predictions. But let's just look at the pass offense for the Raiders, 15th versus the 5th ranked pass defense for the Chargers. Vice versa, I like to go offense versus defense, defense versus offense. So you see the Raiders have the 32nd pass defense versus the 6th ranked pass offense. Obviously, guys, this is an advantage, a distinct advantage for the LA Chargers coming into this game. Now, conversely, you look at the running game. Run offense for the Chargers, 6th versus the 20th ranked defense. Run defense, 7th versus the 28th run offense for the Chargers. So line of scrimmage battle, I say, favors Oakland. Aerial attack favors the LA Chargers. What does that mean? I can say quickly, it's more likely that the Chargers would jump out to a quick lead than the Raiders. Even though the Raiders are at home, they get a lot of juice from that awesome home crowd in Oakland. It's more likely that the Chargers go up 14-0 in the first maybe quarter and a half than the Raiders do. And if that happens, that changes the complexion. Now, Gruden's patient, but it changes the complexion a little bit. So it's something you got to pay attention to. Also, this pass offense is 15th for the Raiders. That's pretty good considering Tyrell Williams has been out. I would say if you probably, weighted that, they might be more like the 13th or 12th. I think they'd still be on the outside the top 10, but they are a little bit better, and I want to acknowledge that, Raiders fans. I do understand that they're a different passing offense when he is in the game, and Hunter Renfrow is also advancing. Now let's look at the gambler stats again. If you're new to the show, I do this every week, but long story short, gamblers, professional gamblers, I guess you could call me a semi-professional gambler, but professional gamblers, the guys that actually do this and wager like tens of thousands of dollars per game and you do this for a job, they like to look at a couple of key metrics, and these are the highest level. There's a ton that goes into it, but these are the highest level ones. And you look at yards per play, you look at conversion percentage on third and fourth down, basically how long can the offense stay on the field. You look at red zone conversions. After they stay on the field, can they actually punch into the end zone? And then, of course, turnover margin. How many possessions are you giving away a game? So if you look at this yards per play, it's kind of interesting. If you look at the Raiders, they average 6.2, which is really nice, but the Chargers only give up 5.6, which is pretty reasonable. So if you average those out, that's like a 5.9. If you just take the average between those two, 5.9 yards per play for the Raiders. Very, very high level. Defensive yards per play for the Raiders, 6.3 versus 5.9 yards per play offensively for the Chargers. You average those two out, it's 6.1. So yards per play, it's a 0.2 differential in favor of the Chargers. Let's dig deeper. Third down conversions, the offense stays on the field nearly 50% of the time. The Chargers give up 45% of the time in third down conversion. You look at the other way. They stay on the field. The Chargers stay on the field 45% of the time. The Oakland Raiders are pretty decent at getting off the field as well. Third down conversions, they're about the same, okay? Fourth down conversions, the Raiders are just better at fourth down conversions. So they're a little bit riskier. They're a little bit better at staying on the field on fourth down. Then you look down. I'd say, yards per play, conversions, maybe slanted just based on the yards per play, maybe leaning a little bit towards the Chargers in this case. But if you look at the red zone percentage, the Raiders, they score well, but they also give up a bunch. I would say that if you, again, take averages, take these out. The Chargers' offensive play caller has just been dismissed. We don't really know what we're going to get. I would say red zone conversion percentage slants a little bit towards the Raiders. So basically, between the injuries, which I think are fairly even in terms of who's injured and where, if you look at the passing game versus the running game, and you look at all of these percentages, this is about as even a matchup as I've come across. The Chargers have really good analytics, but they've just been underperforming, which leads me to believe that the Chargers coaching staff, and we saw them fire their offensive coordinator there. I think I think the coaching staff for the Chargers gets less out of their team than the Oakland Raiders do, and that's a big important factor. Okay, now let's dig into the path to victory. Again, I'm doing a little bit of a different format this time. I used to do side by side. This time it's just team, but I think it's a little bit cleaner. Let me know what you think. For the Raiders, first and foremost, they have to get pressure on Phillip Rivers. They cannot let Phillip Rivers have time in the pocket to pick the secondary apart. They need to get Phillip Rivers off the field. They need to make him uncomfortable. They need to pass the rusher. I think they need to blitz more than they normally would. The ball control, look, this is a Josh Jacobs game. I don't think Derek Carr matches up well against this LA Charger defense. They need to run the ball. They need to every week, and John Gruden is really good at that, but you stay away from that fast start. Another thing, I think the screen game is going to be tightly defended. I've been looking through. I plot the stats for the games and the play calling charts. I think it's going to be tightly defended. I think that means that Hunter Renfrow can continue his development. I don't have a great projection on him, but I think they need him to win his battle in the middle, and they need to use their tight ends. I like Moreau and Waller this game, tactically speaking, to basically put them in third and favorable positions. And last but not least, I think the Chargers are going to give up opportunities to Tyrell Williams. I think he will have two deep passes that are, he'll have some openings. Derek Carr has to hit him on those passes, probably both of them. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think the Chargers will put up points. The Raiders need to put up points. I think the deep pass, the opportunities are going to be few and far between. I think you get two. I think you get two to Williams. You got to hit them both, I think. At least one, but I think you got to hit two. The Chargers, how do you win? I got to say, analytically, they stack up quite well, like I said. This is a 4-4 and a 4-5 team. The Chargers being 4-5, they need to stop the run. If they can stack the box, I know that they have a defensive tackle and their middle linebacker's hurt. Stack the run, make Derek Carr beat you. Josh Jacobs, Yeah, the thing with Gruden is that he will slam Josh Jacobs into that line and happily take 3 yards per carry in the first half, knowing it will take the toll in the second half. The key for the Chargers is, can you extend that lead early? Oakland defends the run very well, like I mentioned. Utilize Ekeler and Gordon more in the screen game. I think the screen game, unlike for the Raiders, I think the screen game will work well. I think they match up well. The Raiders will give up yards in the past 2 running backs. I think Ekeler, this matches up so well for him this week. I love him in fantasy football this week. The 3 primary receivers all match up very well in the secondary. Assuming the offensive line can hold their own against the Raiders, they should be able to pick the Raiders secondary, pick on them, I should say, and get some points. And third down percentage, though, they have to win that battle. This is where Oakland, I think, excels a little bit. This is where I think Oakland and John Gruden get more out of their team than Lynn and his squad gets out of the Chargers. I do think the Chargers will be out-coached in this game. I think they will be out-schemed in this game. But if the new offensive play caller there can convert a few more third downs, stay on the field longer, rest that defense and that defensive line who's going to have their, basically their butts kicked all game against a tough Oakland running game, rest those guys, make them, be able to fight against and push that pocket and hold the line of scrimmage. I think the Chargers have a really good chance to win. So the last thing I always do here is the fantasy football projections. This is from RoccoBot. If you're unfamiliar, he's my basically it's an algorithm I built that spits out fantasy football advice. It's usually pretty good. I know my followers don't have any complaints. I'll say that. Derek Carr, not a great projection for him, 14.87. That's not a start projection. Josh Jacobs, that's 1 to 2 touchdowns. I think he's in there. Jalen Richard, or maybe you prefer Washington, but either way, I don't think it's a really good week for pass-catching running backs this week. Tyrell Williams is a start. Like I said, I think he's going to have 2 opportunities this week to get deep touchdowns. He's got to convert them. So I like him. Hunter Renfrow, I think he will... I think he can outperform this projection here. I think that he can play better, and I think that Gruden will utilize him more, as well as Waller. I do not have Foster Moreau on here. I usually only include 1 tight end. Foster Moreau might be a good daily fantasy budget play for you this week. I think Foster Moreau might get a touchdown, but I think Darren Waller is going to be utilized more to push the, in between the 20s basically, which is kind of what he did to begin the year. Defense and special teams for the Raiders, I don't like it. I think they're susceptible to giving up big plays, so I would not play them. For the Chargers, I think Phillip Rivers, basically the entire passing game, I think is a start. Even Melvin Gordon there, I don't love him to get a rushing touchdown, but I think he'll get a nice yardage. If you look primarily at these fantasy football statistics, the Chargers versus the Raiders, you have to say that the Chargers would be favored. I would say that RoccoBot favors the Chargers, but I do think that statistically, analytically, from a betting perspective, I really think this is a very, very close game. Rivers, like I said, is a start. I think Ekeler will get a lot of catches and yards this week. Keenan Allen, I think, definitely gets in the end zone once, possibly twice. Mike Williams is a nice, I think, daily fantasy play, although I would not start him in my fantasy football lineup. Hunter Henry's a great play, and I don't like the Chargers defense either. I don't like either one of the defenses in this game. I think it's going to be higher scoring. Going to be interesting. Thursday night's always a little goofy, though. I mean, honestly, Thursday night, it wouldn't shock me if we all call for a high-scoring game and it ends up like 9-3 or something. That stuff happens on Thursday nights. I hate Thursday night games. But there you have it. Very close game. I think that the Raiders, my guess is the Raiders win a very close game. Just my gut. I think they win like a 30-27 game. But we'll see how it goes. The Chargers just beat a really good Green Bay Packers team. Can they keep that momentum going? We'll see. But that's my pick. That's my analysis. And again, everybody, if you could please like and subscribe, that really, really helps us out. And check us out. We'll be doing a few more games this week as well. Thanks, everybody.